You know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley. We hope everyone had a very happy 4th of July. And if you didn't, so what? It's the 4th of July. Who gives a shit? But hopefully you were able to at least hang out with some friends or family, if that's what you want to do. At least take some time to relax a little bit. So because it is the holiday week, Dylan was unable to record with me this week, and I am actually only off one day this week due to having to work a day of overtime from vacations, etc., etc. So we didn't really have a lot of time to record this week anyway. So we took the week off, and usually that means it's time for a Patreon preview. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a free episode that you could normally hear on our Patreon. If you head over to our Patreon for $1, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. That is at punklottopod. And the episode that I've decided to share with you all is our first Bracketology that we played over on the Patreon. So if you're curious, we've done a few of these now where we take albums from a specific year and then we put them in a bracket against each other, tournament style, single elimination. And the very first one we did for the Patreon was on albums released in 1985. Some really good records on this list, some really fun head-to-heads here. We've loved doing these, and we've done quite a few since then. It's part of our regular rotation of formats for the Patreon. And if you wind up enjoying this, head over to the patreon.com/punklottopod, where this week I'm solo, and I am talking about the top 25 albums of 2023 so far. I did one of these last year, and I really liked it, so doing another one. 2023, weird year for music, and my list last year was 50 albums, and this year it's only 25, because I could only get super excited for about 25 albums, so we'll see what the rest of the year has in store. But head over there, check that out. And yeah, you can follow us on all the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at punklottopod. We'd love a Blue Sky invite if anybody's out there got one to share with us, because we would love to get off the Twitter. But I think that'll do it. Hopefully you enjoy this and you have a great rest of the week. We'll be back next week, starting off what I'm calling a season of episodes where we have a loose theme that we work around. So I'm looking forward to getting those out there. And thank you everyone for listening. We will talk to you later, and enjoy the show.
My favorite thing growing up, man, this is a little weirdo. My favorite thing were tournaments and brackets. Yeah, no response is the appropriate response.
What's up, patrons? Welcome to this week's bonus audio. I'm Justin.
I'm Dylan.
And it's a little late. This is, we're recording this on Friday, and the same day it's going to go up. And, yeah, we've just had a great time trying to figure out a good time to schedule and record. Thanks to my terrible internet, which is now fixed, but, didn't fix our schedule for the week. So it's late, but it's here. So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to attempt a bracketology for the patrons. This is going to be, the two of us instead of 3 people like we normally do on these. But I don't know, it's going to be a little bit more a laid back version. I kind of had the idea of doing these more often just because people really like them. So I was like, well, what should our theme be? And so I thought that instead of doing bands like we have done in the past with the pop punk bracket, the Ramones core bracket, the IRS one, was there another one? Oh, the ska bracket too. I thought we would just do albums. And I just picked a year at random using the old number generator method. And I got the year 1985. So what we're going to do is a bracket of albums from 1985 of the punk variety for the most part. And I was trying to come up with a way to do a tiebreaker in case Dylan and I vote against each other. And I thought maybe we could use just the Rate Your Music ranking or rating. But I also kind of got this seating ranking from Rate Your Music, so it would be kind of obvious. So I thought we could just use whatever common review site or magazine covered them. Most of the time, it's probably gonna be like all music. I thought that would be a good tiebreaker if we get stuck on stuff, but we'll do that whenever we get there. So yeah, it's all albums from 1985. I'm trying a seeded method versus just the random seeding that we usually do, and of course, this usually means like a really strong record is going to go up against a weaker record, but that's how brackets work. So, anything you want to add before we get started?
No, not really. Curious to see how this will work.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be funny if we just wind up agreeing on everything. I don't think we will though. But yeah, it's a strong year, 1985. Some really good stuff here. First rounds are usually kind of obvious, but we'll take them one at a time. So our first matchup, it is the Jesus and Mary Chain's Psycho Candy up against Naked Ray Gun's All Rise. Start us off with Psycho Candy. Let's talk it through real quick.
Psycho Candy is the debut record by Jesus and Mary Chain. I guess it's considered a shoegaze precursor, probably the first significant noise pop record, as people want to call it, which I guess fits. I mean, if we're gonna, it's one of those made up genres that I'm not really gonna quibble over too much because it fits, at least in Jesus and Mary Chain's case. I do think that people like to throw it around in occasions where it doesn't really make much sense, but I think when you consider what kind of songs they were writing and how insanely noisy they are, especially on this record, I think it fits. But what's your impression of this record?
So I've listened to this a couple times, but it's not really one that I go to whenever I listen to the Jesus and Mary Chain. I think I like their other stuff a little more, stuff like Darklands and Automatic, just because they're a little more, well, they're a little less noisy. I think those are a little bit more slicker produced albums. And I mean, I get it. This record's super duper important. I'm a Three Stooge. I'm Curly Howard all of a sudden. It's a super important record because if you really think about the context of it, this is 1985. So this record does feel super ahead of its time, especially when you look at all the other records that we have against each other. They all feel of the moment, while this one feels like, didn't this come out in 88? You know, that kind of, they are the shape of noise pop to come, I guess.
Yeah, I think within the context of like, if you're looking at it in the context of like punk, or even looking at it in the context of like UK post-punk, which is kind of more of the scene that they're kind of coming from, it does seem ahead of its time. I think when you consider what they were influenced by, it's kind of actually pretty far behind the time. Because I mean, they cite like Suicide and Velvet Underground and Einstürzende Neubauten. So that when you put it next to like, oh, like, you know, no wave and like industrial and stuff like that, you're like, okay. So this is definitely like more of its time, or at least, or even kind of a little bit behind. Because I mean, when you think about like the first Suicide record, if you think about what kind of songs they were writing on there, and then you listen to this record and you listen to songs like The Living End, The Hardest Walk, you know, there's a lot of stuff on here that's like very indebted to that first Suicide record, and that came out in 79. When did the first Suicide record come out?
Might even be earlier than that.
Yeah.
Is it a 77 record?
Yeah. The debut was 77.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider, you know, when you look at like how much like rockabilly and like is influential to both, you know, and a lot of garage rock is influential to both Suicide and Jesus and Mary Chain. You're like, oh yeah, they were kind of like a Suicide worship act, but with more guitars and like fuzz pedals instead of drum machines. but Psycho Candy is a record that ultimately I think I respect more than I love.
Yeah.
I respect it especially as like the starting point for a band that I do really like a lot and who have a few records that I absolutely love. I think it's got great moments. Just like Honey, the opening track, I think really carries so much of the record. It really sets such a tone that I'm like, I see why people, it was accessible enough that it can pull you into the noise and I see how it made that impression on people as a record, but overall, not their best, not one I reach for.
So on the other side of the coin, we have the number, I guess they're the number 16 seed. So they were the lowest ranked album on this list. And Naked Ray Gun's All Rise was the second full-length album by Naked Ray Gun. And we covered Throb Throb on the show. And I'm trying to remember what our final thoughts on that record was. I think we were ultimately positive on it, but it wasn't what Naked Ray Gun would become on the next record. Because All Rise, I think, is the one where they're like, okay, this is Naked Ray Gun. This is the whoa-ohs on nearly every single song. Though yet it's still not my favorite, which would be the next year's record, or the 88 record, Jettison. And that's probably the most, well, I guess right, Throb Throb is technically the more well-known one, but I think Jettison is like their best record. So All Rise is just, it starts off with Home of the Brave, which really sets the whole record and has songs like The Strip and I Remember, Peacemaker. But yeah, any thoughts on All Rise?
This is definitely a Naked Ray Gun record that I do reach for.
Yeah.
I think the sound is there. Like they've kind of solidified it in the direction. I think that the songs aren't consistently on par with like what they would do on later records. On the next two, but not a hard record to listen to, easy to reach for, really I feel like a natural starting point with Naked Ray Gun. I mean, I did like Throb Throb, and revisiting Throb Throb when we did was good, and I'm glad we did it, but it's not as good as this one, and I think this is a really good starting point for anyone who wants to. I think that's a problem with Throb Throb being Throb Throb being the more popular, quote unquote, Naked Ray Gun record is perhaps what underrates Naked Ray Gun, because I think people go listen to that one and they're like, it's all right, and then maybe don't move forward with the band.
Yeah.
But I think if you start with this record, you're going to be like, all right, well, I'll go back to the first one and really enjoy it. And I'm interested to keep going forward with this band.
Yeah. Throb Throb has that. It's the first one, which was really important for American hardcore and punk in the 70s and 80s, which is that where that whole mentality of I liked their early stuff better comes from. It's just American hardcore. They're the ones people who love hardcore music are the ones who usually act like that the most whenever it comes to newer records. But yeah, All Rise and Jettison are the two I go listen to whenever I want to listen to Naked Ray Gun. And it's funny because now that goes up against Jesus and Mary Chain's record that we don't go for first. So I guess we should vote. What are you voting for?
I'm gonna go with All Rise.
Ooh, All Rise. Any justification on that?
Yeah, just based on the fact that it's one that I will reach for more than Psycho Candy. Like within each band's respective discography. Like this one, I think this is a stronger record within Naked Ray Gun's discography than Psycho Candy is in Jesus and Mary Chain's. I generally think Psycho Candy is overrated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the one that everyone it's the most highly rated album in their discography and the most popular, but at the same time, like I said, it's not my favorite to listen to by them. So if we're going purely based on you put the two in front of me and say, put one of these on, I think most of the time I'm going to pick All Rise. So we're throwing our credibility out the window on the first pick by turning down the famous album. But you got to have some truth in broadcasting, some ethics in broadcasting. You can't just lie and say the popular answer.
Yeah, I'm not going to go with a record that I think gives me more credibility. I think you've been listening to this show. If you're subscribing to our Patreon, you know that.
Yeah, and I'd be curious, too, what you, the listeners, think. Because knowing the type of music that I know a lot of you listen to, you might pick Naked Ray Gun more often than Jesus and Mary Chain. So, I don't know. I guess it depends on the record. But so that's an upset. The number 16 seed beat the number 1 seed. That is wild. That is the Arizona Coyotes beating the Boston Bruins, to make a hockey reference. All right, our second matchup. It is the number 8 seed, the Descendants, I Don't Want to Grow Up against the number 9 seed, Misfits, and the Legacy of Brutality. Which one do you want to start with?
You go first on this one.
All right, let's talk about the Descendants because, yeah, this is the higher seated one. So this is the band's second full-length album. I'm going to pull up the track listing. Of course, following Milo Goes to College, the more infamous record. Though I've always felt like I Don't Want to Grow Up is probably a better record than Milo Goes to College. I don't know. That's a tough call. But this record features the title track, I Don't Want to Grow Up. It's also got Pervert. So, this is a Descendants record. This one also has Silly Girl, which I think is probably my all-time favorite Descendants song, as well as In Love This Way and Christmas Vacation. And Good Things. Honestly, the B-side is way better than the A-side of this record. Because the A-side is Descendants, I Don't Want to Grow Up, Pervert, Rockstar. The B-side is all of those songs in a row. We've talked before about how we're not really like the biggest Descendants fans. They're a good band and I like them, but they have enough things in their discography that make me go, ugh, that's kind of gross. But like I said, this record has some of my all-time favorite songs by the band. How do you feel about I Don't Want to Grow Up?
It's not one that I've spent a ton of time with. I've always struggled with Descendants. They're such a hit or miss band for me. There's no Descendants record that I like from beginning to end. There are large chunks of every record that I'm just not into. And I don't think that this record's any exception. I think that, like you said, that B-side is way stronger on this record. If they did more stuff like that B-side, it would be a great record. But it starts kind of like, all right, we got I Don't Want to Grow Up. That's a song by them that I would want to hear today.
Mm.
But what even else is on that A-side?
Can't Go Back's on there. Can't Go Back's a strong song too. See, I don't like Pervert, even though it's like a well-liked song. And I get it. It's a tongue-in-cheek song, but I don't know. Whenever they tried to be tongue-in-cheek, they accidentally wound up being still somewhat offensive. I can't pull to mind Rockstar and No FB. They're like 30-second tracks each. And GCF, I can't even recall that one either. The B-side is just strong, like front to back. I think the weakest song on there is maybe Theme, which actually, no, that's still on the A-side. Okay, there's 9 tracks on the A-side and 5 on the B-side. So yeah, the B-side is perfect. In fact, it might be the best single side of a Descendants album, period, if we're going on the vinyl format. All right, let's talk about Legacy Brutality, a not real record. It's a compilation, right?
So Legacy of Brutality is the overdubbed mixes of a lot of Static Age material, and it does have a couple of other songs that don't really show up anywhere else. I want to say, how many Static Age songs is it?
Well, Static Age has 17 tracks. It's a lot of them. I'd say most of this record is on Static Age, but Static Age does not have Where Eagles Dare.
Yeah, it doesn't have Who Killed Marilyn either.
Yeah.
And they threw Halloween on here, and I'm not really sure why, because Halloween was Halloween only a single? Was it not included on?
It's not on Walk Among Us. Definitely not on Earth AD. It may have been just a single at that point. Because when's the first? Yeah, they don't start doing. There's a compilation in 1980 called Beware, but it doesn't have Halloween either. So I guess the only way to have heard that song would have been if you had the single or somebody dubbed a tape for you and put it on there. So Legacy Brutality, I guess, is kind of the first time you have to think about it in this context. Static Age was shelved and not actually released until like the 90s. So for most people, this was the first time you were hearing most of those songs.
Other than bootlegs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, bootlegs existed, of course, but
not widely available. This was probably like the easiest way to get a lot of these songs.
Yeah. And it's got Static Age and TV Casualty, but it's also got Hybrid Moments and Some Kind of Hate, She, Halloween, Where Eagles Dare, Angel Fuck. These are some pretty like top tier Misfits songs as far as some of their best material, with Walk Among Us probably having the rest of the best material. But so wow, okay, it's kind of tough. But there's also a lot of stuff on here that I'm like, Spinal Remains, Come Back, Theme for a Jackal, like American Nightmare. These are not my favorite Misfits songs. I don't even really love Static Age or TV Casualty that much. So there's 5 songs on here that I do genuinely still like. They're another band though that's kind of like who listens to the Misfits that much anymore?
The Misfits and the Descendants are they fall into that category of classic American punk bands that you cannot escape hearing in over the PA system at almost every punk show at a medium-sized venue you go to. It's just like, this is punk rock Spotify playlist. So you've heard too many of these songs.
Yeah.
Too many times. That being said, as an album, if you're looking at Legacy of Brutality as a record within the context of thinking about the oversaturation of Misfits songs, with the exception of Halloween and then like maybe Where Eagles Dare and maybe Hybrid Moments, you don't really have a bunch of songs that are insanely overplayed on this record. Like Static Age, TV Casualty, Spinal Remains, Comeback, Some Kind of Hate, Theme for a Jackal, Angel Fuck. Like, you aren't hearing those a lot. Like, someone might sneak She into like a playlist as like a sneaky like this is actually like a really good Misfits song that you want to hear again. Like it's the familiar but different selection. That is it.
It's the first song on the Misfits comp, like the first big Misfits comp though is She.
But it's not, it's not like Last Caress. It's not even like Teenagers from Mars, which, is a good song that I do actually still enjoy. I do think though, of the most like overplayed songs on here, Hybrid Moments, Where Eagles Dare, and Halloween, those are all good to this day, enjoyable songs to hear. Like those are the big Misfits hits you want to hear in 2023.
Yeah, well, Where Eagles Dare especially. Amazing.
It's so
chorus.
satisfying.
It's a satisfying song. Yeah, the melody. And I guess if you look at the 3 records you had, 82, 83, and 85 of the Misfits, you had Walk Among Us, Earth AD, and Legacy Brutality. Like those were your Misfits records. And if you, in all honesty, I probably would put Legacy Brutality on more because Walk Among Us is great, but it also has a lot more of the like songs that I don't care about. Like I don't care about Nike A Go-Go or Violent World or Devil's Whorehouse. I don't even care that much about. I mean, Astro Zombies is all right, but I don't know. I Turned Into a Martian is probably my favorite on there. So I guess out of the 3, I'd pick Legacy over any Misfits record. And if I look at the Descendants, I'm probably gonna pick I Don't Want to Grow Up over any Descendants album. So I guess you voted first last time, so I'll vote first this time. Gosh, the A side is so weak on I Don't Want to Grow Up, but the B side is so strong. But Legacy Brutality is stronger from front to back, so I'm gonna go Legacy Brutality.
I'm gonna go Legacy of Brutality too. I think when you look at Misfits LPs,
yeah,
it's like the first consistently good one.
Yeah,
or consistently great. Because I do think Walk Among Us is a good album.
Yeah, it is.
But it has a lot of low points. I would go with Legacy of Brutality.
All right. Let's move on to our third matchup. We have the number 4 seeded Husker Du New Day Rising against the number 13 seed Minutemen. 3-way tie for last. Luckily, we cannot 3-way tie here. So, start us off. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I guess since I'm Husker Dylan, we should talk about New Day Rising.
Sure.
What a phenomenal record. I mean, just think about recording this record the month that your 70-minute magnum opus comes out. Zen Arcade drops and you're like, oh, don't worry, we got more in the bank. We've got 40 minutes of brain lacerating riffs. And then you put out another record the same year as this record. The Husker Du was a band just on fire. I mean, they had so much shit to put out. There's hardly any other bands that have that much back to back like this. It's such a shocking run of records. New Day Rising, of course, features the opening track, which is really just Bob screaming the title over and over and over again. An all-time Grant Hart song, a classic through and through, Husker Du, The Girl Who Lives on Heaven Hill. This has Celebrated Summer, I think one of their best songs. It does have some weird songs though.
Yeah.
Books about UFOs,
Which I actually really like Books About UFOs.
it's a great song. It's definitely a goofy Grant song though.
Yeah. But it has a great melody to it. It just maybe doesn't feel like a Husker Du song. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah. It does have How to Skin a Cat, which I don't dislike, but you get the cat skins for nothing. But it's weird. And it's weird for Husker Du even. It feels like a Meat Puppets song or something. Like it's a really, really odd experiment in their discography. But of the classic Husker Du records, it has a couple of songs that they don't jump out to me when I see the title.
The B-side especially.
What You Drinking?
Yeah.
I really can't call that song. I mean, it's a minute 30. Perfect Example. Folklore, If I Told You. Like, there's a couple of songs on this record that they don't immediately come to mind. And I'm sure they're very familiar when I hear the records and I love them, but there are more, I think there are more low points on this record that are just songs that I forget.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really a low point. It's really just kind of a plateau than almost really any other Husker Du record. I guess if you go back to the first record, there's probably some stuff on there that I'm just like, I don't remember that one off the top of my head. And then like by Warehouse, like the last record being probably the one that most people are least familiar with.
Yeah. We talked not too long ago about Zen Arcade and talking about how it was the masterpiece record, but also like it's not the one you go to first. And I did mention that New Day Rising I probably go to more than I do Zen Arcade. One, because it's shorter, but it has the same problems as Zen Arcade has, where it's like, oh, the dips are a little bit too low, but the highs are just so incredibly high, like some of the highest highs of any album in the year. Yeah, it's a tough one because it's also going up against the Minutemen, and you were talking about how like no band has had so many back-to-back bangers, basically. And then my immediate thought was, well, the Minutemen also had Double Nickels on the Dime, Project Mersh, and Three-Way Tie for Last, all within a year's span, 84 and 85.
If Project Mersh were longer, that would be a real toe-to-toe match. Like, which one's better? Yeah. Double Nickels through Three-Way Tie versus Zen Arcade through Flip Your Wig. And then Husker Du, I mean, gets to also tap in Candy Apple Gray, and they kind of get to keep going, which unfortunately the Minutemen did not due to D. Boone's untimely passing. But
yeah, you'd have to go back. I do think the Minutemen's earlier material is better than Husker Du's early material. They have a pretty good discography that, like, if you put them next to each other, you could debate who has the best discography pretty evenly, I think, because I feel like the first two Minutemen records are better than the first LP and Metal's Land Speed record and from Husker Du. But yeah, Three-Way Tie. So Three-Way Tie is the final Minutemen record, full length. It starts with The Price of Paradise. So looking at the track listing, it's not as obvious a good record because, like, I don't know, the song titles, I guess you're not really like which one's Lost or The Big Stick. But I know the Have You Ever Seen the Rain cover and the Red and the Black cover.
The Lost was a cover as well.
Okay, yeah. Ack on here, another cover. Yeah, it's tough because Minutemen, I don't know, they also don't feel like a band that you could take their songs out of discography as easily as you can with Husker Du. Because if you just start like plucking random songs out of Double Nickels, you're going to be like, what's this? 2 beads at the end? Mr. Robot's Holy Orders? What? But there's the way Three-Way Tie for a Last starts. It just starts with, it starts immediate with D. Boone's guitar. And it, listening to it and knowing that like this is the last thing we're going to get from him, it is always a record that makes me just feel melancholic and sentimental. That riff, it's like a sad riff too. I don't know. It's a tough one. What are your thoughts on Three-Way Tie?
I love Three-Way Tie.
I do too. I think it's underrated.
It's extremely underrated. It's way too overlooked. It is interesting. I feel like the material leading up to and including Double Nickels. Well, Double Nickels deserves the attention that it gets within the Minutemen discography, but the material leading up to Double Nickels overshadows the material that followed, and the material that followed Double Nickels is so much better than the first part of their career.
Mm-hmm.
Project Merchant, Three-Way Tie are incredible records with so many great songs, so many great riffs, and they're produced better than anything that the Minutemen did before.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, you would think like with Minutemen, like the production would be one of those things that is holds people back. I mean, no discredit to Spot, but because I like the raw sound that he has on that earlier stuff. But if people are looking for like Minutemen to be this like, alt rock adjacent band, with contemporaries like Meat Puppets and opening for REM on tour, like it's odd that their later records aren't talked about more.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at the ratings on here, it has a 3.19, and that is way too low.
Yeah, that is way too low. Because
I would rather listen to Three-Way Tie more than anything pre-Double Nickels. That being said, you put them all together and you probably still have 50 minutes of music between 2 LPs and like 5 EPs. Yeah, it's a criminally underrated record. And I don't know if it's just people just don't like listening to it because it's the last thing, but that's why I don't listen to Ballot Result, because that's the true last thing. That's the one that makes me go, they were going to do a 3 LP album. And each side was going to be 3 studio sides and 3 live sides. And that's what the Ballot Result was for. But yeah. Let's vote. You go first.
This is probably the hardest matchup.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with Three-Way Tie. As much as I love New Day Rising, Three-Way Tie to me is that record that I listen to when I want to imagine what the world would have been like had D Boon not died. It's a record full of so much promise of where their career could have been, which maybe that's what hurts it. Maybe that's why people don't go to it, because it is especially sad within the context of the band's story. But it's such a fun record from beginning to end. It's experimental and weird, but all of the weird little experiments work. It's maybe too heavy on covers, but the covers are great. Like that Red and the Black is incredible.
Yeah, it's so good that I didn't know it was a cover for so long. It took me forever to realize, oh, it's a Blue Oyster Cult song. Okay.
I mean, I think of of Watt singing "Are You Going to Bermuda" all the time. That just pops into my head.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna vote for Minutemen Three-Way Tie for last as well. So it is moving on to the next round. All right, our next matchup, we have the number 5 seed Rites of Spring and their self-titled album Rites of Spring, and the number 12 seed The Damned and their album Phantasmagoria. I'll start this one off. So Rites of Spring, one of the innovators of emo. What year was the Embrace record? Is that 86?
87.
So it's even later. Okay. So Rites of Spring are probably the truest inventors of emo core specifically. I'm sure there's arguments to be made about, well, technically kind of Husker Du is a part of that, but Husker Du get credit for other things more so. Rites of Spring is kind of like the track one side one of emo, and it's fucking incredible. It's an incredible record from front to back. Spring, Deeper Than Inside, For Want Of, Drink Deep. Just the way that Guy sings these songs, the line, the piece of the past stuck in my throat and then I choked, that line, or if I started crying, would you start crying? Like just these amazing lyrics. So much further ahead, honestly, than Ian as a songwriter. Ian's great. I love Ian's lyrics, but Ian's more like a hammer, whereas Guy is more of a poet. Now, I think Ian gets there once he starts writing with Guy and Fugazi, but it's just like a front to back, just stone cold classic. It's incredible what's on this Rites of Spring record.
I vaguely remember when I first listened to Rites of Spring, I probably downloaded the record and listened to it. I was like, wow, this is so good. And then probably very shortly, probably within a few months of listening to it the first time, I found a copy of it at a record store, and I posted about it on Tumblr. I was like, oh, I just picked up a copy of Rites of Spring, and I distinctly remember good buddy John Russell reblogging me and saying, welcome to your new favorite band. That's always stuck with me. Rites of Spring, if you like Rites of Spring, there's some version of you that this is your favorite band. Like, it's just such a perfect record. I don't know anyone who likes this record who doesn't think it's a perfect record.
Yeah.
Like, you might not like it, and then you just don't like it at all, and you don't listen to it. I can't imagine there's anyone who's... I don't know how you can listen to this record and only rate it in the middle. How do you give this 3 stars?
Yeah. Who gives this 3 stars? What type of person are you?
It's such an instant, like, classic 5-star record. Like, and I think it's always been that way for me. Like, it's always been... I didn't have to grow into it. It was just like hearing it for the first time and being like, this is incredible.
Yeah. So on the other hand, we have Phantasmagoria by The Damned, which is considered the first of the goth Damned albums. So really, you could say every Damned record is a little bit of a goth record, but it's the one where they were like, okay, now we're going to do something completely different, because Strawberries and Black Album still are very much like a punk band. This one is just like, all right, we got shitloads of organ on here now, and like strings and just
percussion.
Yeah. And it helps that this is where, Captain Sensible's gone. So his guitar writing is not there anymore. So this falls on, let's see, who played guitar on this record? We covered this album a while back. This would have been Roman Jug. He was their organ player, and he switched over to playing guitar. And he's no Captain Sensible. But at the same time, Dave Vanian really gets to explore as a vocalist that I think is incredibly important. And he has such a cool voice. Like, he already had a cool voice, but what he does on this record, it's just like, oh, I didn't know you could go like that, Dave. You know, I'm always annoyed that the true version of the record does not feature Eloise on it. It was a single that was added later to CD editions, but this record does have Street of Dreams, which is an amazing record, amazing song. Shadow of Love, Grimly Fiendish is such a fun song, but it's also got Trojans, The Eighth Day, Edward the Bear.
It ends pretty weakly.
Yeah. And even then, the highest high on this record is the opening track, and then, or maybe Grimly Fiendish, just depending on what your mileage is on those songs. I don't know. Shadow of Love's great too, but there is like a circus music element to that record too that's kind of funny to think of as being put on a gothic record, but really
but I mean,
go ahead.
Machine Gun Etiquette just sounds like circus music from beginning to end. And it's great.
I guess you just have to look at, okay, Phantasmagoria is what? The 5th best Damned album? I guess it just depends on how much you like it over the Black Album or Strawberries, but whereas with Rites of Spring, it was a one and done. There's like an EP too? That's about it. All Through Life, 87 EP. Do you have any Phantasmagoria thoughts?
I think it's a good record. I think it's fun.
I think it's underrated.
Yeah. I don't think it should be written off for not having Captain Sensible, but I do think it would have been a better record if Captain Sensible had been there.
It's one of those things where they needed each other, because if you've ever heard anything that Captain Sensible did,
yeah,
outside of the Damned, you'll be like, oh no, go back.
He needed the Damned maybe more than the Damned needed him.
Yeah, because the Damned still had Dave without Captain Sensible.
And Captain Sensible played bass on Damn Damn Damned, which is an incredible record. So like his contributions are much smaller at the beginning of their career. I don't think this one's a hard vote.
No, let's vote.
It's Rites of Spring.
Yeah, Rites of Spring. All right, our next head-to-head. It is the number 2 seed New Order and their album Low Life up against the number 15 seed X and their album Ain't Love Grand. This one feels like it's going to be pretty obvious. I started the last one, so you start this one.
Let's go with, we'll just go in order. New Order's Low Life.
Yeah.
The third, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have really kind of dabbled in New Order. It's been a kind of a slow exploration of their discography. I've never felt compelled to be like, I will listen to all of New Order within a short time span. It's really been drawn out over years of being like, there are still New Order records that I haven't heard. Now I've heard all the classic ones at this point, but
the first 5 maybe.
The first 5 I want to say.
Technique.
And really early on, I loved Power, Corruption, and Lies. It was like that record kind of made me think, well, maybe this is just the one. But Low Life is the one where I was like, oh, okay, no, there's definitely more than one.
Yeah.
There's got to be a lot more to this band to explore and hear. And this is a contender for favorite New Order records. I mean, Power, Corruption, and Lies really made that impression, and that's really hard to beat when you have that first record that you really love by a band. You have to start to look at things objectively. But we're not voting on the New Order discography.
Yeah.
So this record on its own, Love Vigilantes is great. Sunrise is great.
Elegio is great.
Really just a great record for me.
Perfect Kiss, This Time at Night, Subculture. This record rules. I mean, if we're going with the first 5, I think Low Life probably is my favorite New Order record because I just recently covered Brotherhood on Dance of Days, and Brotherhood I think would have been better if they hadn't chose to sequence it the way they did. They were like, one side was the rock band, the other side was the electronic band, and it's just like, you got to mix them up. You got to do both.
Yeah.
Though that record has Paradise and Bizarre Love Triangle. And Bizarre Love Triangle might be one of the best New Order songs ever written. But Low Life has, I think, a higher quantity of their best songs. I think Low Life's probably the most digestible New Order record. Interestingly, it has the exact same rating as Power, Corruption. They both are 3.83s on Rate Your Music. It's very, very funny. They have the identical scores. I think Low Life is the one I'm going to go to the most when we're looking at the New Order discography. Maybe. I've never done any of the later reunion records. I'm sure there's good stuff, but I've just never done it myself. But yeah, I think Low Life is one of the absolute best New Order albums. So that means it's also going up against X, and a record that's not really considered one of their best records. Ain't Love Grand was them trying to go new wave. Is that how you describe that album?
Yeah, I guess.
Now, this was the last, was it the one with Billy where he's like, we got to make it on this one and I'm out.
Yeah.
And then they didn't make it and he was out.
I feel like he was on his way out regardless.
Yeah. It doesn't even feel like he's on this record, to be honest. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's really weird that Ain't Love Grand is the last Billy Zoom X record. When it sounds the way that it does, and then See How We Are is the next record. That one feels like it should be the last Billy Zoom record, and he's not on it at all.
Yeah.
Tony Gilkison from Lone Justice is on that one.
I can't even really defend Ain't Love Grand. I've never listened to Jesus, so I don't know which is worse. The album cover is definitely worse on Jesus though. But Ain't Love Grand just does not sound like X. Like, their first 4 records are fantastic, and they all have a sonic consistency through them. Ain't Love Grand is such a drop off in quality, and I guess it's just because they were just trying to be who they weren't. You can't take the rockabilly and cowpunk out of X. It goes against their like DNA to do that, you know?
Yeah. It really is what X is. Like, they are really fundamentally a rockabilly band.
Mm-hmm.
They just get called punk because of the scene that they were in.
Yeah. Like I said, this is the number 15 seed, and I don't think we're going to get an upset here because I'm going to vote for Low Life.
No, yeah, I'm going Low Life. virtually tied with their greatest record.
If you had any other X record, we'd actually have a debate there. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Our next face-off, it is the number 7 seed Husker Du with their second album of 1985, Flip Your Wig, against Black Flag, the number 10 seed, and their album Loose Nut. Okay, so you kind of danced around Husker Du earlier and talking about how they had 2 albums in the same year. So I genuinely was like, no, I think they deserve to be on this. This album deserves to be on this bracket. All right. Between Flip Your Wig and New Day Rising, I might pick Flip Your Wig over New Day Rising.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm like, which record do I want to listen to? Probably Flip Your Wig.
Yeah, it's Flip Your Wig for me. The
Yeah.
title track, everything, makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Hey Paper Doll, Green Eyes, Divide and Conquer. Holy shit.
Now, this one does have the baby song.
The baby song. Yeah.
Which is one of the worst things Husker Du ever did.
It's just, you can skip it on streaming, or if you're listening to it digitally. It's such a, like, when you're listening to the LPs, it's just like, oh fuck, hurry over there and turn this down. It's only 40 seconds long, thankfully, but yeah, of the many odd experiments in the Husker Du discography, the biggest failure of them all is the baby song.
Yeah, this is the record that, famously the majors Warner wanted, but they were like, no, we're going to let SST have it because they've been good to us. Man, how history has changed when it comes to that.
And they regret it.
Yeah.
They were like, man, I wish we hadn't done that. We would have gotten paid off of this one.
Yeah.
Makes no sense at all. Might have actually
Charted.
Yeah, might have really gotten some marketing put behind it.
If the fact that Warner, because that means Warner heard it and they were like, no, we want it, give it to us.
Yeah.
That means they were like, nope, this is solid gold, Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. Flip Your Wig and Candy Apple Gray are probably the 2 I'm going to go to first out of any Husker Du record. And it's probably this one first, honestly. Candy Apple Gray rules. Candy Apple Gray is so good. But I think Flip Your Wig is the easiest record to be like, hey, you want to like Husker Du? Here you go. Not you want to hear a piece of classical, not classical music, but you want to hear a piece of music history. That's when you hand them Zen Arcade. But if you're like, if you want to become a fan, you hand them Flip Your Wig. All right. And we're going up against Black Flag's Loose Nut. We're talking late stage Black Flag at this point. There was another Black Flag record in 85. It was Family Man. I was not going to put that on this bracket. No, wait, sorry. Excuse me. Family Man was 84. It was In My Head. It's the other Family Man.
the other unlistenable record.
And Loose Nut is a hard record to listen to, too. But
Loose Nut is one of the hard to listen to Black Flag records that you still make the effort to listen to.
Right. Because the song Loose Nut, the opening track, it's kind of like a classic Henry Black Flag song. It's like it has his energy perfectly encapsulated. And then it's also going to Annihilate This Week, which is another just kind of like groove-based, heavy, loud Black Flag song. To be honest, though, I don't know what else is on this record. I think it's not the worst Black Flag record, but it's the last one I think you should hear from them. It's the last one I'll recommend. And even then, I may not even recommend it. I might be like, no, just go listen to Who's Got the 10.5. That's got the 2 songs off of it. Yeah, this isn't a hard one either. One of the greatest Husker Du records and one of the bad Black Flag albums.
Yeah.
So we can vote, but I think it's pretty pointless. I'm going to Flip Your Wig.
Yeah, it's Flip Your Wig.
All right, our next matchup is the number 7 matchup, and it is the number 3 seed, The Fall, This Nation's Saving Grace, and the number 14 seed, Gray Matter, Food for Thought. This is probably the most interesting matchup on here.
Yeah, it's a real dark horse match. Both important, great, even records, but neither one of them are like our bands.
Yeah. I'm trying to make the Fall a band that I like. The discography is so massive, and I have liked a lot of what I've heard, but it's like I said, it's just so big that I've barely scratched the surface. This is one that I've gotten to though, because it is one of the important records in their discography. In probably their last most important era, though I guess the 2000s stuff might actually be pretty important too. But yeah, this one is, what number is this? The 8th by my count on here, between The Wonderful and Frightening World of the Fall and Ben Sinister. And I think it's the best of those three. It's tough. I'm such a novice when it comes to the Fall. How well do you know this one?
This is probably one of the Fall records I know. I don't know. I'm so all over the place with the Fall. Weirdly, I think I've listened to more of their like 90s and 2000s stuff than I have their like classic 80s stuff. Just because of how my calendars have brought up Fall records, and I'm just kind of at this point where I'm like, yeah, I'll listen to a Fall record from any era. I'm just like, yeah, out of pure curiosity, I'm like, what kind of record is this going to be? But of the 80s records, it's like this one and Hex Induction Hour that I know the best.
Mm-hmm.
And I would likely put this one above it, though I've heard a lot of Ben Sinister, and I really, really enjoy what I've heard from that record too. So, but I don't know that I've listened to that one all the way through. So I don't know how I would rate it.
Oh, it's going up against Gray Matter's Food for Thought, which is how many Gray Matter LPs are there? There's not a lot. They have like 2 or 3? 2. Thog in 1992. I guess I was thinking, okay, Take It Back came out in 86. That's their EP, and it's a longer EP, I want to say. It's 6 tracks, so it's about 20 minutes long. So it feels pretty important. That was also put together with Food for Thought on CD issues. And yeah, Food for Thought are the, what do you call them? The third wheel of the Revolution summer emo bands?
I think most people would say DAG.
Oh, that's true.
I don't know. I see a lot of, not dispute, but some people classify DAG as an emo band. Some people classify DAG as a hardcore band, and not emo at all. I
think that album gets tagged emo because of when it came out and where it came out and the bands they were playing with. If we're being completely honest, it is just a melodic hardcore record.
Yeah, but I mean, one could very easily argue that that's really just what emo was. Considering what hardcore was in 85. If you weren't doing like Husker Du, if you were doing melody and hardcore at all, you were probably in DC.
Yeah.
You were probably a Revolution summer band.
I think Gray Matter feels more emo core than Dag Nasty does. I guess that's how I view it. Because Gray Matter to me feels like they have much more in common with like a Moss Icon or the Hated than Dag does. Which I also think those are a step away from the Revolution summer, the Rites of Spring and Embrace. So
yeah, I would say Dag doesn't have the level of they don't have the level of introspection, and they don't have the the kind of impressionistic sensibility that like Gray Matter and Rites and even Embrace kind of have, of kind of trying to look at things from multiple angles, like tonally and lyrically. Dag are definitely much more straightforward with their emotion, but I think that they were doing something that was not typical of hardcore within a scene.
With Dag, with Brian's guitar, that's where I really make that emo or the Rev Summer connection, because he plays guitar in a very similar way too.
Yeah.
Who plays guitar in Embrace? Was Ian playing guitar on that record?
Ian plays guitar on it, but I think doesn't Baker.
Oh, wait. Well, then I 100%. I forgot Brian Baker's in Embrace too. So that's why. It's Brian Baker's playing in both bands. No, he doesn't.
No.
It's Michael Hampton.
No, it was Michael Hampton. The guy who was in Nothing, but like a bunch of other stuff. He was in Faith, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was guitar player in the Faith, yeah. As well as Ivor Hansen, the drummer.
Which the Faith, got to give him some credit for proto emo.
Yeah.
Like them and Scream.
So I guess the question becomes, this is probably the most interesting head-to-head. Where are you leaning?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. Neither are like records that I've spent a lot of time with. Both are records that I appreciate. I'm tempted to go for Food for Thought because it's clearly the more underrated record of the two. But I think the importance of This Nation's Saving Grace is backed up by the actual quality of that record. So I'm gonna go with The Fall.
So my thinking was going to be, what style of music do I just prefer? And I do love emo core more than like post-punk. So this might be our first one we have to come up with a tiebreaker on, because I'm going to vote for Gray Matter. Also because like it's the only like really important Gray Matter record, whereas The Fall have a lot of other really important records.
Yeah, but this Fall record also has Spoilt Victorian Child.
Well, let's see what our tiebreakers should be. I mean, I feel like I know who's going to win on just music critics' mental, thought processes. So who has reviewed this album? This Nation's Saving Grace has been reviewed by... we might have to go to All Music to get a rating on this one. Because when you look at the actual... it shows the contemporaneous reviews. They're all like Calgary Herald, Daily News, Music Week. The Village Voice gave it a B+. Here we go. There is the retrospective reviews, and All Music has given it a 4.5 stars. Pretty hard to beat. Mm-hmm. And All Music has given Food for Thought a 3. So, okay. The Fall shall be the winners going forward. It's probably the more important record anyway. All right, our final head-to-head in the first round. It is the number 6 seed, The Dead Kennedys, and their album Frankenchrist, and the number 11 seed, The Dead Milkmen, with Big Lizard in My Backyard. Frankenchrist. What's the worst Dead Kennedys record? Is it Frankenchrist or Bedtime for Democracy?
Well, I remember being surprised at how much I liked Bedtime for Democracy when we revisited it.
Yeah.
Frankenchrist, I remember liking more early on, but then when I look at this track listing, kind of like, well, what's a standout here, really? Soup is good food.
Soup is good food. This could be anywhere. Jockorama's pretty fun.
But it's got Chicken Farm. Let's go down to the chicken farm. Goons of Hazard. MTV Get Off the Air.
Stars and Stripes of Corruption's on there, which is really good. So my problem with Bedtime for Democracy is that it's like one of the hardcore records where they just are like, we're just gonna play fast for every song, and so it doesn't quite have the unique guitar playing that some of the other albums have. I think the highs on Frankenchrist are higher, whereas Bedtime for Democracy is probably more consistent. But yeah, I do think Jockorama is probably like one of my favorite Dead Kennedy songs. And this is the one with the H.R. Geiger painting and insert that got them in trouble.
This is the, I think, multi-times litigated record for the H.R. Geiger obscenity thing. And then also I think they got sued for the Shriners album cover.
Did they? All right, Dead Milkmen. A band that I don't think we've ever hidden our feelings on. They're like the punk worse They Might Be Giants, but Big Lizard in My Backyard is like the only Dead Milkmen album that I can listen to. But I don't know why I would want to. I guess the other thing. Do I really need to hear Bitchin' Camaro?
This is a record that I could see myself convincing myself that I should listen to it and then skipping through most of it. Well, I don't know. We probably could just go ahead and vote on this one. I don't think I have anything substantially positive to say about this Dead Milkmen record.
Yeah. It doesn't even have Punk Rock Girl on it, so.
Yeah, which one's that one on? That's the one I would listen to. This is the one I would listen to and go, oh, Punk Rock Girl's not on here.
Well, I don't know which one Punk Rock Girl's on.
El Cow? That's got Bitchin' Camaro. It's got a bunch of the same songs.
It's on Beelzebub Bubba.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize it was an 88 song. Whoa, that's late. Oof. See, even then you're like, oh no. Is Beelzebub Bubba, but it's tied with Big Lizard for rating. So it's probably the other one to listen to. But I don't want to listen to either of them. Yeah, I'm gonna go for the Dead Kennedys.
Yeah, it's not hard.
All right, so that's everyone on the round 1. So let's go to round 2. The first matchup it is Naked Ray Gun's All Rise against the Misfits' Legacy of Brutality.
Huh.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly hard.
Because if you think about, like I said, the way we came to our conclusion with Legacy of Brutality is when you look at the albums up to the point of 1985. So let's pretend we can't see into the future and hear later records. I'm probably gonna reach for All Rise more often, more frequently. But I think Legacy of Brutality is probably more important.
Yeah, I think that if Legacy of Brutality was actually Static Age, this would be a much harder contest. As it stands, it is a pretty tight race just because it's not the best Naked Ray Gun, but it is possibly the best Misfits record up to this point. So if it's 85 and I'm like super into both of these bands, it's probably a really hard choice.
I'm trying to think of, like, they're brand new, both given to me, and I've listened to them back to back. Which one do I like better?
I think at the end of the day, I think that Naked Ray Gun is probably going to be the more consistent record. I mean, from the benefit of it having been recorded at the same time.
Yeah. Legacy of Brutality.
Not literally a compilation.
Because by the time Legacy of Brutality had come out, I think they were already like either done or about to be done. Because Wolf's Blood had already come out, and they were a hardcore band again. So it would have felt like whoa, this is an old record.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean, you're in between the first 2 Sam Hain records.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Naked Ray Gun. That's my vote.
I think I'm gonna go with Legacy of Brutality though. I just can't get over the fact that this is probably the first time you could have heard any of these songs. Unless you had a bootleg, but in all reality. So we need to come up with a tiebreaker here. So let's see. What did All Music give Legacy of Brutality? 4 stars. Now what does All Rise have? 3 stars. So our tiebreaker is leaning towards Legacy of Brutality. Unless you want to come to a consensus on one. I'm trying to think what our audience would vote if they could vote. And I could see Misfits winning that. All right, so it'll go on. And then our next head-to-head is Minutemen's 3-Way Tie for Last versus Rites of Spring's self-titled album. This might be... I want to say this might be the hardest matchup, but at the same time, after thinking about each of them and talking about Rites of Spring the way we did, I think I'm just leaning Rites of Spring.
I think it's Rites of Spring. It's not a hard choice, but it is... You wish it didn't have to happen this way.
Right. It's a painful choice. Yeah, that feels pretty logical. All right, then. So our next head-to-head, New Order's Low Life against Husker Du's Flip Your Wig. I don't know. This one, it's a tough one, actually.
If I had more of an emotional attachment to New Order, I think this would be harder, but I'm going to go with Flip Your Wig.
I am leaning Low Life. Let me look at the track list again. Makes no sense at all. Hey, Paper Doll, Flip Your Wig. Man, Green Eyes, Divide and Conquer. Oh, man, that A-side strong. You're right. I don't quite have the emotional attachment. Actually, though, I'm not as emotionally attached to Husker Du as you are, though. I'm going to vote New Order. So what's the tiebreaker? I feel like we better with a coin toss. All right. All Music has given Flip Your Wig 5 stars. All right. What's Low Life? I bet it might have 5 stars, too. We have to find a second opinion here. Whoa. Okay. Well, All Music gave it a 4.5. So Flip Your Wig goes on. Wild. That's funny. I wouldn't have guessed it to go that way, but pretty cool. All right, the last matchup. The Fall, This Nation's Saving Grace against the Dead Kennedys' Frankenchrist. This one actually feels pretty easy to me.
Yeah, I don't think this one's going to be too hard for me. But I don't know what your answer is going to be. This feels easy, but I feel like we could also be divided on this one. I'm going with The Fall.
I'm going to go with The Fall, too. If this was Plastic Surgery Disasters or even...
Oh, yeah. Fresh fruit even.
It wouldn't be that hard. But, yeah, I'm going to go with The Fall on this one. Just because This Nation's Saving Grace is a more important record in The Fall's discography than the Dead Kennedys' Frankenchrist is. So,
yeah.
All right. It gets easier the deeper you go. The Misfits' Legacy Brutality against Rites of Spring's self-titled. I'm voting for Rites of Spring.
Yeah, it's not even really close.
And now Husker Du's Flip Your Wig versus the Falls, This Nation's Saving Grace. I'm going Husker Du. That's pretty easy.
Let's go Huskers.
All right, Huskers. It's Rites of Spring self-titled versus Flip Your Wig by
I
Husker
kind of
Du.
had a feeling this is where we were going to wind up.
It's hard, but also not hard for me. I'm one more emotionally attached to Rites of Spring than Flip Your Wig, and it's the only LP by Rites of Spring, whereas we have other Husker Du records to choose from. So I'm gonna vote for Rites of Spring.
Yeah, I'm going with Rites of Spring. It's the only album on this bracket that I have said outright as a 5-star record. I do love Flip Your Wig, but it is not quite a 5-star record to me. It's if this was in Arcade, then Arcade versus Rites of Spring. You're talking formative records. But yeah, if I started crying, would you start crying?
All right. Well, when you take a look at the entire bracket from the beginning, and you look at it and you go, yeah, it's probably going to be these two records. Or yeah, I could have seen Minutemen going further, but maybe if the matchup was different. But yeah, I'm happy with this. Even if I laid them all out, if I was just ranking my favorite albums of '85, I probably would say Rites of Spring is my favorite overall, if not. But yeah, all right, everyone. Well, let us know what you thought of this. Are you like, way off? Could not have been more wrong with your picks. Or are we kind of in the right lane as you? I don't know. Leave us a message, comment on the comment section here on Patreon, or send us a message on one of the social medias, or comment on one of those posts. But I don't know. I had fun doing this. I think this is something we can throw into a rotation.
It worked better than I thought it would.
Yeah. Maybe we need to give a blind ballot to someone in the future and have them pre-fill it out to be our tiebreaker. I guess we could throw a poll. A poll on Twitter or a poll on Instagram, and then just whatever's the leading answer by the time we have to make a decision. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, this was fun. I like doing this. So maybe we'll throw it in the rotation. But all right, everyone. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the new release Friday bonus audio that I'm about to record. So talk to you later.